it really helps the franchise consultant if the franchisor already has a preferred method in place and has already analyzed all their current franchisees.
Welcome to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast, where we talk about all things franchising. Now, here's your host, Dr. John P. Hayes.
Hey, it's the Franchise Hot Seats, and Red Boswell is in the house, and I'm happy about that. Welcome, Red.
Honored, John. Excited to get with you today.
All right, well, I'm going to put you in the hot seat right away.
I live there with my wife. I live in the hot seat, so I'm ready.
So you're a franchise consultant. You represent them. IPG do. Let's say for a moment, Red Boswell is the guy I'm going to call to buy a franchise. You're familiar with those guys. And they don't like to be called brokers, advisors, or consultants, or what's another word? What do you prefer?
You know, consultant's the best word for it. Matchmaker, coach, advisor, absolutely.
Right. You're one of them, Red. And I want to buy a franchise. And you represent 300 brands or 500 brands. How many? Give me a number.
606.
All right. Wonderful. I know I'm not going to pay you anything. That's one of the good things. I mean, I'm not directly paying you anything. I am paying you. We could talk about that later. But I just don't believe that you're going to help me find the perfect franchise for me, particularly when I'm not paying you anything. Because I know, well, I don't know, but I'll know now. They'll know now. The franchisor is going to pay you. And a franchisor might pay you $40,000 to bring me to the table as a franchisee for them. Others might only want to pay $15,000 or $20,000. You'd rather get $40,000 or $50,000 for the same work, right? So even if the lower paying franchisor is right for me, you might try to put me into something that not quite as good for me, but still maybe okay. Now, I know you wouldn't do that because you're an honest guy, but come on. We know consultants, coaches, brokers are not all created equal, nor are franchise concepts. There are some franchise brands you should not buy, and I hope you don't represent them. And there are others that are fantastic and you should buy if you can afford them and if everything else lines up. So let's go back to this. How do I know you're going to put me in the best deal for me, not the best deal for Red?
Love this. I'm feeling the heat already. Well, Dr. Hayes, John, Red Boswell here is president of the largest franchise consulting group in the world. So I personally am not a consultant, but I appreciate you suggesting folks talk to me. We have over 650 certified franchise executives out there helping people identify the ideal franchise. So John, I'll turn it around and answer your question with another question. Have you ever bought a house using a realtor? And that realtor might have shown you a home that the listing agent was giving some extra percentages on.
Sure.
Right? Didn't keep you from working with that real estate agent. You work with the real estate agent, perhaps by their expertise, their reputation. Maybe you know them, like them, trust them. And ultimately, to your question, how do you know that consultant or that real estate agent in this analogy is showing you the absolute best unselfish option for you? Well, it's in a real world, I guess you never really 100% know absolute certainty in every case. But with IFPG, certainly, and many of my wonderful competitors, integrity first. And the I in International Franchise Professionals Group, I say in every one of my State of the Unions at our conferences, it first and foremost stands for integrity. So we work from a position of our clients' best interest first. And you know what? We've got a lot of pretty intelligent clients. They see any shady business. They see some opportunities where they go, why in the world are they showing me this? It makes no sense. Then they need to run.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
So you are at least saying, I don't like the analogy of the real estate agent and the house because it's I'm not depending on the house performing for me. I like the house. I know when I walk into the house, I like the house. I could live here. I got to add a pool, but that's okay. Over across the street, I wouldn't have to add a pool. I like this side of the street better. I like the layout of this house better. Not the same as buying a business and buying into a system and a concept. And I got to depend on somebody else, a franchisor, to make sure that I'm going to be able to perform in this business. Now, I've got to do my job too, but I also better make sure that I'm a good fit for that particular kind of franchise. And I think you would be the first to agree with me. There have been consultants that have put people into businesses, and you would scratch your head and say, why did they do that? Well, we know why they did that. It was a better payoff than some of the alternatives.
Well, I'll take part of what you said and agree. In buying that house, let's use the analogy again, did that real estate agent make you buy the house? No, you like the house. It was a good match. Yeah. And absolutely, you're working with a consultant or an agent on the franchise side to help you identify the best opportunity for you. They didn't put you in anything. You analyzed it. You were shown numerous options. In our case, over 600 brands, narrowed down to perhaps a dozen. Go through those dozen with the candidate, help them narrow it down further and further, all the way to typically the final 3 best fits that the candidate, the buyer, feels are their best fits. Then they go through the process with each of the franchisors and they determine which one they like the best. So there's no putting or making or forcing anyone in anything, but rather advising as a consultant and advisor would do to the best interest of the candidate.
Part of what we're dealing with here are all kinds of folks who are buying franchises. Some spend some time getting educated about franchising. Yes. Many do not. Some will do due diligence. Many are hoping Red Boswell is going to do my due diligence, kind of like the realtor. You hope the realtor gets out there and says, here are my criteria, knock the stuff out of the way that I don't want to spend time seeing, and show me what. Again, it's not the same thing because there are others involved in the process after the sale. The house is still the house after the sale. So some people are going to depend on their coach or their consultant to help them through that. And some may be making a mistake by doing that, but they don't know. And if the coach doesn't have that integrity that you talk about, then it's very easy for a prospective franchisee to go down the path of being guided into something that paid a good payoff for the consultant, but there were better choices for that person to invest in had they just been a little better educated.
I guess you could look at it that way. Certainly without the advice and counsel and education and hand-holding and introducing of the consultant, that candidate is much, much, much worse off 99% of the time. In fact, I'm not a full-time consultant in any way, but when a friend from church or somewhere comes to me and asks for my guidance, almost every time they have an idea already. They think they want to buy XYZ and they're seeking my advice before they sign that check.
No. So
not one single, never in 2 decades in franchising has that individual bought the franchise they thought they might because it was not a good fit, because we have vetted them, because we do have behind the scenes information that will protect the buyer rather than hurt them.
Good transition. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So I show up as a buyer. I've been a teacher, high school teacher for the last 20 years. I'm really tired of that. Don't want to do it. Want to be in my own business, but I don't know anything about business. And I meet you at church and I like you. And let me put you in the role just for this scenario of being a franchise coach. And you represent 600 different brands. I didn't even know there were 600 brands when I show up and start talking to you. And yeah, I've got an idea. I say, I'd like to be in the swimming pool business or whatever it might be. But I don't really know if that makes sense or not, if I can even afford it. So you invite me over to talk to you, probably not in person anymore, but maybe if we're both local, you would do that. You'd have coffee with me, but probably it's on a Zoom or it's on a phone call. And what are these resources that you have that are going to be able to really be put to use to help me find the right franchise?
Yeah, great question, Dr. Hayes. So a lot of parts of the answer. First of all, IPG is going to do some vetting on the front end. We're going to look as the franchisor comes on board with us. We make sure they understand how the consultants work and what their place is in the process. We then take their FDD and take it apart, look at their financials, look at their attrition, dissect their litigation if there is any, and if it's closed or still open, get to the bottom of it. And sometimes we will turn them away, not allow them to be represented by our consultants. Next is the consultants themselves are doing ongoing vetting. It never ends. When you have 650 plus consultants and they're all dealing with all the franchisors, we are evaluating FTDs. We were evaluating their processes and their attrition ongoing. So lots of vetting going on behind the scenes ongoing. Next, it's the expertise of that consultant who's gone through the certification program and living and breathing franchising day in, day out, oftentimes for years, if not decades. And part of being that consultant is the psychology behind it to understand your candidate. So when we do have that candidate come into process, the friend from church who asks for help, we're getting to know them better if we need to. We're educating them on what franchising is and isn't, because so many of them don't have a clue what it is and isn't. And maybe a misconception. Oftentimes at that stage, we scare them off. And if we do, praise the Lord. We're doing our job to help them not make a life mistake. And then we start asking them the more in-depth questions around what's the best fit for them. Not necessarily, do you love pool cleaning, but rather, what is your end game? What's your budget? What's your geographic preferences? What are your pros and your strengths and weaknesses? What's your background? Will the spouse be involved? The team? How many hours a week? On and on and on. Lots and lots of questions to further narrow the ideal opportunity.
So I love the DISC profile, but I love personality profiling. I've used it for nearly 40 years. I use it in the classroom with all of my students. I want to know what their DISC profile is. DISC is easy to use. It's also free to use, and you get a quick read really fast. There are other more sophisticated, broader, franchise-specific profiles, and I don't sell one over the other. That's not my point. I think profiling is important. Do you and do your consultants?
We do. We don't require they use any certain profile. It's up to them how they want to customize that. In some cases, they may not use one at all because they already know the individual. And some franchisors really love it. Some don't care about it. So each case is specific. I'm a huge fan of our friends at Zoracle, Franchisor and Oracle. Zoracle, they do a terrific job integrating DISC with some other profiling tools to come out with an incredibly well done profile, which in many cases Zors also use, whether it be DISC or Strength Finders 2.0, Colby, etc. PeopleSync. It really is taking it to the next level for the candidate, for the franchisor, and for the consultant to better understand what the best fit is.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I don't know what percentage of consultants believe that. I can't imagine investing in a franchise without knowing that I'm a fit. And the DISC personality profile is a good way, or a personality profile is a good way to find that out. I also am amazed at how often franchisors say, if you want to be in our business, we can teach anybody our business. That's just not true. There are people who, if you're a D personality, you're a whole lot different than a C personality or an IS personality. And that franchise may not be able to be as operated as well by a C personality as it could be by a D personality. But still, I never understand this, but franchisors poo-poo oftentimes that information, which would make me, in doing some due diligence, a little suspect about that franchise system. They don't want to know who I am, but the DNA of my personality. I'm not sure how much real interest they have in seeing me succeed. So that concerns me. And I'm sure there are consultants who don't believe in it either. But is that a tool? Is that where you begin? Is that where your consultants begin to find out who someone, do they give other assessments or tests?
Well, they do certainly use other assessments and tests. I'm a huge fan also of Strength Finders 2.0. So regardless of the test, you're right. Understanding your candidate and helping them understand themselves is taking it to the next level of consulting and really being a true advisor. It really helps the franchise consultant if the franchisor already has a preferred method in place and has already analyzed all their current franchisees and been able to rank those Zs so we know which of the profiles is the most optimal fit for the candidate who matches the top franchise producing franchisees. When we have that, man, it helps so much. But to your point, not a lot of Zors provide that.
Before we continue, let me tell you about the Selling Franchises Bootcamp coming up at Palm Beach Atlantic University, the home of the Titus Center for Franchising in West Palm Beach. This 2-day boot camp is jam-packed with information and people who will help you sell more franchises in 2023 and beyond. Everything from lead generation to technology that people are using today to sell more franchises, to events that you can incorporate, to how to sell to the generations of people who are buying franchises. Baby boomers don't buy the same way as Gen Z buys, and you need to know that information. Plenty of networking opportunities, 3 major keynotes, lots of information that will be valuable to you in this 2-day boot camp at Palm Beach Atlantic University. You can get all the details at tituscenter.com. Click on Selling Franchises Bootcamp. It's set for January 19 and 20, 2023. So it's still looking at these 600 plus franchise brands that are interested, work with this particular consultant or work with consultants.
Sure.
And how, I can't keep 6 brands in my head.
Yes.
Understand how I probably could do 6. Could I do 16? I'm not sure. I know I couldn't do 600. I couldn't do 100 and do it with that integrity and that sense of this is my brother investing in a franchise.
Yeah.
I'm not going to slip up on this. I got to get this right, but I'm not sure that everybody has time to do that, to treat everybody like a brother or sister or family member. So how are they keeping all this straight?
So you're absolutely right, John. No one on earth can be an expert in 600 franchises, or for that matter, an expert. And guess what? A franchise advisor or consultant is never can be and should not be. We don't dive to the depth of the candidate. We vet them, the franchisor. The disc assessment, the asking the questions, the narrowing it down to discussing it with the candidates, and then allowing the franchisor, who is the expert on their opportunity, to communicate properly and do their part. One of the ways the consultants vet franchisors is if there is a unsavory or shady franchise development rep, they're not getting our leads. We're dealing with people that work above board and have that integrity that we also have. So yes, and by the way, with technology today, the franchisor is able to provide the consultant with so much helpful and pertinent information that the consultant really can do a better job than ever of matching the candidate down to enough brands that the consultant and the candidate can discuss these brands, what's good and bad, what's attractive and not attractive, why they do meet what ultimately that candidate's looking for, and then narrow it all the way down to that typically final 3. And sometimes that final 3 might not have the one, no problem. Let's look at a couple more. And as we take you through the process, you're going to 99 out of 100. If that's a real buyer with seeking that is the freedoms and the opportunities that franchising can offer, they'll be the right fit shortly in that process.
In that process, how long does it take to get to the final 3? Is that a goal to get there in 2 weeks or 2 months? Or?
Well, the candidate, it's up to them. What is their ideal process? Some folks are in a hurry, got a inheritance burning a hole in their pocket, and they can't wait to get out of the job, so they want to move fast. Others, they're taking their time. There's no big on them to make a choice, but most are going to go through it. The first steps with the consultant, 3 to 4 in-depth phone calls, 3 to 4 solid discussions to the point where we're now ready to make that introduction to those 2 to 3 to 4 franchisors that candidate, that buyer, will go through their process together, still checking in, still having those cadence calls with the candidate and the consultant to discuss the pros and cons, to be that sounding board, to be that tough love counselor at times to remind them why they're doing it in the first place. That consultant does not go away. Even after awarding a franchise, the consultant is in the background to help guide and introduce, perhaps to a funding source, perhaps to attorney to review the documents, marketing companies, on and on and on, even HR firms. We work with them all to help not just the ZOR, but the franchisee as well.
You mentioned before that today with technology, franchisors can provide so much information to consultants to help them understand the system, the franchise system itself, and other attributes that should be met. Not only can your candidate afford the investment, but is this the kind of business that they're going to, if not have passion about, be comfortable in? Can you talk about the technology, which we didn't 20 years ago, as long as you and I have known one another, going back that far, we didn't have technology. You couldn't even go online and read an FDD. You had to get the big clunky printout of the FDD. What's the technology? Give us some examples of technology that franchisors are using now and consultants.
Sure. Well, the personality matching tool and that you just discussed is certainly helpful. The ability, just simple keyword searches when you have over 600 brands and you say, this is a very, to Palm Beach Atlantic where you reside with the Titus Center. It's a Christian organization. And some of our candidates say, I really want to be part of a Christian organization. Well, you can do something as simple as a internal Google search, the consultants, and type in the word Christian and see what brands have that as part of their culture. Faith-based or blue collar. So that's a simple way that wasn't in the past for us to match. Another example is once that consultant has gone through a bunch of steps and conversations to narrow it down, let's say we've narrowed it down to the best 28 brands that look on paper like they might be a good fit. That consultant can push a couple buttons and it texts and emails every franchisor that is a match to ask, are you available in this zip code or this geographic area? And if not, how close could you be? And then it documents and tallies who responded, when they responded, and how they responded. So what's available, what's not. Again, allowing us to do our job more efficiently and even be a better advisor to that candidate. Other ways such as understanding when the discovery days are coming, understanding the ideal candidate in all its forms, also communicating what a typical day in the life of a franchisee is. The videos, the downloads. We have an average franchisor gives us 5 downloads on whether it be the profiles or testimonials from Z's or their hot markets or the markets they're not going in. All these little things add up to help the consultant be a better advisor, run their business more efficiently, and of course, impact more lives positively through franchising.
Yeah. And franchising definitely does impact lives positively. I never want to forget about that. But there are lots of elements in these processes of helping somebody find a franchise, which is what we're focusing on. Right away, you know how much money do they have to invest. And that's a limiter. I mean, if they only have $100,000 to invest or they have $150,000 to invest, you're not going to spend your time looking at a $300,000 investment, good or bad. Should they look at the $300,000 investment because they need to find a way to go out and borrow $100,000 to help them get stretched to get where they need? Would they be better off doing that? Does the consultant get involved in that?
Well, to your last part of the question, the consultant always gets involved discussing how the uses and sources of the funds, makes appropriate introductions to the lending sources, the 401k, ROBs, rollover programs and IRAs, the home equity, maybe the SBA, who's been really aggressive here through COVID. So, John, probably 95%, if not more, of franchise buyers use other people's money, even when they have a lot of their own. They want to mitigate that risk and hold on to what they have. Some terms out there can be so attractive. That 401k rollover, using your own retirement accounts, has some incredible pluses to it. But it ultimately comes down to what the candidate is best for the candidate, their risk tolerance, their long-term strategy, that of their spouse being involved in the process will help determine that. And having some conversations with the true pros that make those loans day in, day out. All are factors to figure out what's best for your candidate. And to your point at the beginning of maybe they have 100 or 150 to invest. Well, if they truly do want to invest that amount of money, boy, if that's 20% down on an opportunity, you've got a whole lot more opportunities. But if you don't want to borrow at all in any capacity and only use your liquid capital and you've got 150, we, for example, probably have 250 excellent opportunities that meet that financial criteria. So 150 opens up a lot of doors.
Okay. So you had mentioned before that part of the process at IFPG, you have, I don't know how many people who are, a franchisor says, we want IFPG consultants to represent us. And you say, okay, send us your disclosure document and whatever else you require from them. And then you scour through that information and your team says, yes or no or maybe to this brand. And if it's no or maybe, you're not going out to your to your network of consultants and saying, hey, here's a brand that you need to know about.
Right.
Do all consultants do it that way?
They certainly don't. We are what I describe, my team laughs at me, but I describe it as very libertarian, not in a political sense, but we believe in options. We don't believe in Big Brother telling us what we got to do, how and when and where. And so extending that to our culture of let the free enterprise system do its job. We still vet. We make sure that someone's not a lying, cheating, and stealing scoundrel. But as long as their financials, their attrition, and their litigation is where it needs to be, or not be in the case of litigation, then we bring them on. Let me give you a real life example. Looking the other day, IPG has 9 opportunities, franchisors that kill mosquitoes. 9.
Wow.
Now, to the winner go the spoils. Let the best opportunity win. And who am I to say what the best opportunity is for your candidate? So we welcome franchisors. We do not limit. And the consultants love that we give them the opportunity to be a real matchmaker for their candidate. And if that candidate's a great fit for mosquito killing opportunities, they've got plenty of opportunities to figure out what's best for them.
And how many consultants do you have at IFPG?
In the 650 range.
Okay. And, probably 10 new ones have joined since you and I have been talking because you're that kind of guy. But, how do you know that I'm going to get one with the big I, the integrity? How do you know, Red, that because they're not all created equal.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you get 2 and you get 20 and 200 and they're like franchise brands and like franchise, some are better than others.
Yes.
How do I know I got a good one? I want the best. I don't want any IFPG consultant. I want the best consultant. You're going to tell me who that is?
With IPG?
Yeah.
Every one of them, baby. You
love. That's not an answer.
You love all your children. You love all your children equally. To your point earlier, John, with you did use the term. I'll just lovingly correct. We don't represent. You mentioned franchisors contact us to represent them. We represent the candidate. We have the opportunity to evaluate the franchisors. So we truly are matchmakers. We're not representing in the form of legally representing them and being a salesperson for them.
Right.
Our first is for the candidate. Now, to your question you just had, it's kind of like, how do you know that spouse you're about to get engaged to is not going to go crazy on you? Well, you just don't. And so we hear the analogy often in the world of franchising that it's like a marriage. It's a huge life decision. You do the best due diligence. You get the most advice and counsel. You pray to the Lord and you trust your instincts and know yourself well. You put all those together, you're very likely going to make the best decision in the world for you and your future. And sometimes people go crazy anyway.
Spoken like the master salesperson that you are, Red. I still want to go back to, let's say I call you and I say, I know you're the president of the world's largest group of consultants, matchmakers, and franchising. I just want the number one consultant. Will you tell me that?
I won't tell you that because going back to that libertarian philosophy of freedom, as long as you're working with integrity, we don't require our consultants nor our franchisors to disclose their deals. So we're supporting them in every way, training them, providing certification, events, magazine, education in every form. But ultimately, it's a relationship that goes from the franchisor to the consultant, and we are just behind the scenes supporting both entities. So I don't know. I genuinely don't know how many deals my top guys are doing and gals are doing.
All right. So you don't, but you must be getting paid somewhere along the way. Do you know who pays the most money to IFPG? Which consultants pay the most money? And there are probably some that don't pay very much. I don't want to talk to them. Just like I don't want to talk to the franchisee who's a non-performer. If I'm going to go interview franchisees in brand B, I want to talk to the top 10 producers. How would I do that at IFPG or with any of the consultant groups?
Man, that is a softball. I love that question, John, because it's a key differentiator with IFPG. We treat every consultant equal. Well, yeah, I read you treat them all equal, but some of them are giving you a whole bunch more than others. No, they're not. Absolutely not. 650 plus consultants, every single one of them pays us the exact same amount per month. We don't touch their commission. We don't see their success fees. None of them pay us any extra for additional training. It is equality across the board. We don't even at our big annual convention, we call it retreat, with this year close to 1,000 attendees coming into your neck of the woods in beautiful South Florida.
No.
We don't give awards. We don't designate. Everyone's equal, and the consultants love it. Our model, my internal mantra, is if we have the best consultants, we win, and we attract the best consultants by providing the best support. First of all, having integrity of leadership, providing the best support, best technology, best inventory, and allowing them to make as much as they want because we take none of it except a small monthly membership fee.
Okay. So you're going to tell me, Red, that in your 650 network of consultants, there aren't any bad ones.
Oh, we're human beings. I'm sure there's some folks that I don't know well enough to say, but certainly we're not all angels.
And that's what I'm trying to get at, that I want the person who follows me, follows my podcast, follows my teachings and speaking and so forth, that they know that they're going to get the best possible representation. And it's hard to find that in our scenario. Now, there are other ways to do that. Go talk to franchisees who have been represented by consultants and ask them, get referrals that way. Are there, what ideas would you have about that? How would you?
How would I, were I a candidate or a prospective buyer of a franchise, approach finding the ideal consultant?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, fascinating question. There are so many ways. Certainly LinkedIn, I'm a big fan of. I would get on there and look around, watch a bunch of videos, do some Google searching. And to your question earlier, John, I'm happy were someone to want to reach out to me. I'll introduce them to my operations team, and they'll make sure they get them with a very successful and well-respected consultant. So I don't play favorites, and I'm not going to send them to any of my buddies, but we will make sure they get with a wonderful consultant if they would like that. Yes.
Yeah, that's certainly a good service, good way to approach it. Now, also on the fee, you don't represent. I don't pay you. As when I come to you to help me sort it down to the top 3, which I think is a great service to provide. Some people never get there in months because they don't know how.
Yeah.
Okay, the consultant who knows how to get me there responsibly with integrity. Wow, that's worth paying for. But there's a misnomer to say that I don't pay that commission, and the consultant's going to get. What's the average? Is there an average? What fee is the average for a consultant to be paid for placing a prospective franchisee?
I tell you, I would lovingly and humbly disagree with there. It's not true that you don't pay anything, because the franchisor is not going to change their franchise fee, the initial franchise fee, if you are not working with the consultant. You go to them and say, hey, I'm not working with the consultant. You don't have to give them any success fee. Kind of like when I bought a house 5 years ago, I went to the listing agent and said, hey, I'm not going to have a buyer on a representative realtor on my end. So give me that 3%, because they charge 6%. One gets 3, one gets 3. The agent simply said, Red, I'll get all 6. I'm not giving you 3. And it's similar in the franchisor world. If they were to give a discount because you're not working with a consultant, then they would have to disclose that for a year or 2 or 3 to every prospective buyer in the world and update their FDD, and it would be a nightmare, and they're not going to do it. So it truly is free for the buyer to work with a consultant.
Okay, we will agree on that point, that in the scenario that you just explained, it's free. But I paid a $50,000 franchise fee. The franchisor could keep all $50,000 and reinvest that money in training and supporting me.
No.
But they can't do that because they've got to give $30,000 to my consultant, who did a great job. But that's really my money. And it's not going to be reinvested in me, although I see how you could make the argument, and I would make it too in your shoes, that you paid for a very valuable service. I narrowed it down to the top 3 for you. I did that in the timing that you asked me to do it in. I didn't waste any of your time by sending you down some rabbit holes that you were never going to buy that or want to be awarded one of those particular franchises. And the franchisees that's not the network you want to be in. So I provided a very valuable service. I agree that you did. I agree you should be paid for that. But I don't like the idea that we say to people, use the consultants because it's free. Not entirely.
John, all right. I like this. I'll put you in the hot seat. How much if that franchisor does not work with consultants,
Yeah.
which is the lowest financial risk of all the options out there for finding ideal candidates?
Okay.
Think about what I just said. Instead, they go spend, real life scenario, Red Boswell, Chief Development Officer of a global franchise brand, 2017, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it is. I was spending my company's marketing dollars on 3 franchise portals. I was getting 100 leads a month from those 3 portals. I was spending $50 a lead, and good old Red with 700 franchisees in 35 countries with a wonderful, very good global brand. I awarded 1 franchise out of 1,200 leads and $60,000. So are you going to tell me that $60,000 that franchisor spent to get 1 real deal, they could have spent a quarter that or a third that or half that or whatever their commission is and my life would have been way easier. So the franchisor is still going to spend the money. It's not like this is money they just spent with the consultant. They would spend it on marketing all day long and oftentimes a lot more than with marketing.
Agreed. No, it works that way. I understand that. I just go back to, listen, if you come to me, an educator, I don't sell, I don't represent, I'll tell you what I know to the extent that I do, but I'm not the expert on pool cleaning franchises or any area like that. So all I know generally is anecdotal, maybe from franchisees, franchisors, maybe from consultants. But I want to make sure, and I don't know you popped up at my office one day at the university and said, I heard you are all about franchising here at the Titus Center, and I want to buy one, and can you guide me through that process? I want to make sure that I'm giving them the best possible advice, and I don't want to mislead them about anything. It's not an easy process, as we know. Not everybody wins in this process. There are franchise brands that you would not want your mother, brother, sister, neighbor investing in because they lack the integrity. So
Amen.
We're always focused on that. And I want to tell people the truth. I don't want to mislead them about any aspect of franchising. And largely, I think that's why franchising in America has been so successful, because we generally do not mislead people.
And the consumer protection-oriented laws around it are astronomically more aggressive to the consumer protection than anywhere else in the globe.
Yeah. So what's your best advice then to someone who's going to go through this process? Of course, it's going to be link up with your local IFBG consultant, and why not? But beyond that, forget our economic interests for a moment. Why should I go look into franchising and buy a franchise, and where do I begin to do that?
Well, I start any big decision in life with know thyself. Really know yourself. Don't fool yourself. We're great at fooling ourselves sometimes, that our strengths, our weaknesses, what we will ultimately do and not do, etc. Like you said, match up with the right consultant, and nobody's going to pressure you. If they are, tell them where they can take a hike to. Get a good understanding of your financial strengths and get some advice on that. Perhaps the consultant can introduce you to the right people. But just know that the consultant is you need to build a good rapport with them. If you're not comfortable with them, don't work with them. They're going to educate you wisely and well on what franchising is and isn't, and help you understand if franchising in general is a good fit. Then they're going to ask you a lot of questions. You're going to have to be open to discussing your financial situation, the good, the bad, the ugly, credit scores, etc., your risk tolerance, your time allotment, all those tough questions that you really have to honestly understand about yourself, and then be open with those franchisors. Remember my analogy of a marriage. You are dating them and they are dating you. Both have to fall in love. And if you love them and they don't love you because you're cocky and telling them, okay, Mr. Sell me, what you got? They're going to lovingly tell you not a good fit. So it's not one simple answer. It's knowing yourself and maturely going through a process to determine if franchising and if a franchise itself is an ideal fit for you in your life.
Agreed. One of the things I love about you, you're full of common sense and all that energy and passion. And I appreciate that. Appreciate you being on the Titus Center Advisory Board, Red. You're always there to help us, and we appreciate IFPG for that.
John, well, if I may interrupt, Dr. Hayes, very few people in the history of planet Earth have had as much positive impact on lives through franchising as you. You're one of my mentors, one of my heroes. I love every minute I can spend with you, and I'm super honored to be on the franchise hot seat with you today.
And I'm pleased that you went through the hot seat process so well. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I love it.
All right.
One of the proudest things in my life is earning my MBA with you and Palm Beach Atlantic University. Well done.
Thank you. And this won't be out. No, I can't say that.
You got some more good news happening over on your side of the world?
Thanks for tuning in to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast with Dr. John P. Hayes. Tune in next time for more conversation around all things franchising.